So we talked a lot about kind of emotion this morning and how that plays a role in both customer experience and marketing. And you know, that is a perfect example how something that is very, very hard to kind of talk about and engage with can be brought to life, and you understand the empathy of those patients in that experience. So kind of thank you to Sue and kind of the NHS for that wonderful video. But I know, Sue, you've got a lot of thoughts about kind of, even though the NHS is seen as this kind of stellar brand, how you can improve the patient experience and kind of tap into that emotion more. And so I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me today. Is this working? Yeah. Hiya. Okay. Right. Yes. So thanks so much for inviting me today. This video is just basically links to everything that the previous speakers were also saying this morning. It's about the emotional connection. I mean, healthcare is not exactly sometimes the service that everyone looks forward to going to hospital or going to see a GP or whatever. So people are full of fears, and quite often the negative emotions of despair, fear, anxiety, etc. And it's so easy for a service like ours just to focus on the technical competence. Oh, here's some drugs, here's some tablets, here are the operation, and then off you go. And we forget that it's the emotional wrapper that goes around that service that's actually really important. And thanks to Lee's Teaching Hospital for this video, because it just illustrates how important. Nobody talks about the radiotherapy in that video. Everyone talks about how we've connected not only to the little boy who's 6 years old, but also to the families as well, but more importantly to staff. The staff engagement is really critical for the NHS. 80% of our assets are actually people. So we pay quite a lot of people. In fact, we are the 4th largest employer in the world. Would you believe it? We used to be number 3. Well, Walmart picked us to number 3 post now. But you can imagine getting 1.3 million staff in the NHS to make that emotional connection with absolutely everybody they see. And I think what we try to do is what we call experience-based design, EBD. Have some of you do that in your own businesses? So we make sure we put the patient and their families at every single touch point. So I'll give you some example. We have hospital board meetings. They will kick off with a patient story, or even invite a patient to come and kick off the board meeting, just to remind some of us that why we're here is because for the patients themselves. But we also put patients on the interview panels. So Derbyshire Community Health Care Organisation put a diabetes patient when they recruit a diabetes nurse. And we have Camden Islington Mental Health Organisation, where they actually train a patient, or what they call them clients in mental health, to actually do induction, staff induction. So instead of staff delivering it, they actually get the customer delivering it. So the customer is really challenging the staff to saying, how can you say you look after me with mental health issues if you're not looking after your mental health? And so what we're trying to do is in the NHS is, obviously our motto is marketing without a budget. So everything we do has to come from our own staff and actually get the kind of goodwill from our customers, our patients as well.
That's great. And has anyone else kind of got any, I guess, stories of where they've kind of elevated their brand proposition and kind of tapped into the emotion of customers?
Well, we're quite an emotional brand at Interflora in terms of the gifts that we're delivering every day. But, you know, we were having a conversation just before we got started. I think any business is so easily falling into the trap of just becoming so functionally obsessed as to what they actually do under the bonnet, as to how the engine works. And spin the clock back a couple of years ago at Interflora, you know, you ask certain people within parts of the business as to what we did, and, you know, there was very much a view of, well, we're about floristry and we're a delivery service and all this kind of stuff. But you peel it right back to the core of what the proposition, what the purpose of your brand is all about. And it's about emotion. And, you know, we've moved from a very functional brand purpose of being the flower experts, it doesn't get much more functional than that, to now leading with a brand purpose which kind of sits at the top of the pyramid of creating beautiful moments for special people. And immediately that kind of brings to life all that we're about, but also it makes people across the business, irrespective as to where you sit, accountable for making sure that they actually feel that they themselves have got an opportunity to actually contribute to a beautiful moment, whether it be that it's servicing for the consumer directly, indirectly through products that they're developing, our business-to-business perspective, knowing that we've got 1,000 florists that are part of our community, and also to our colleagues as well within the business. And, you know, holding people to account to making sure that their behaviours actually live true to that brand purpose is massive. And that's what can get the spring in the step of people that are ultimately working and representing your business in all facets with a really clear brand purpose that kind of everybody can get their head around. Doesn't become abstract or purely focused on profit or anything like that. It's giving real meaning to what we're doing.
I mean, yeah, so eloquently put. And I think if I want to take one thing away from today, let's go and create beautiful moments for beautiful people. That I think, you know, sums it all perfectly. Thanks, Ben. Jerry, if we come on to you now, actually, and I want to change my question slightly, actually, if that's all right. So we were going to talk about, I said I wouldn't throw any curveballs in there, but I kind of am. I mean, the question was, who owns the customer experience? But I guess on reflection and kind of hearing what Ben and Sue had to say there, it's actually who should own the emotion? Should it be customer experience? Should it be marketing?
The customer owns the emotional response to what you do. So I think the mindset of the organization needs to be built around that. That's easier said than done. You know, if you're having an interesting conversation in the boardroom with a very metric-focused ops director or a finance director, and you start talking about emotions, they raise their eyebrows and they go, "Come on, Jerry, you know, stop trying to sprinkle the fairy dust." Yeah, So I think who owns that emotion? It's kind of who owns the responsibility to get in front of the powers that be to make the case for having a focus on customer experience and in demonstrating that whatever you do as a business, it's the emotional response that creates the reaction of customers, what they'll do next time. You know, whether they'll come back, they'll buy more, they'll spend more, they'll buy the premium products, they'll help you expand, they'll share the store, all that sort of stuff. But I think in terms of who, because what you're getting at, if you're saying who owns the emotional response, it's a great question. And a lot of the value is in the conversations around it, because it's kind of what do you mean by own, what do you mean by customer experience, and you could say, well, that should start in the boardroom, ideally, of course. Yeah, wouldn't we want, you know, the senior leadership team to be accountable and responsible? That's not always the case. So it often takes someone who's maybe, and we heard plenty of stories today about, you know, often takes one person on their own in the middle of an organization who gets it, who understands it, who can be that catalyst for that movement to start spreading the word from within about emotions. Because in a lot of organizations, yeah, emotions are just not talked about. It's just, and I think, you know, to your point, you have to be very cognizant of the unintended emotions you create. And I did a bit of work with an airport recently, and their whole, I'll paraphrase so we don't identify them, but their whole kind of ethos was around, we want to be friendly, so the world's friendliest airport, which doesn't really differentiate you from anybody else, but it was kind of, it's a starting point. But what they thought they had a really friendly airport, but one of the things they didn't realize was things like when they were charging people for the little plastic bags, when you go through, you know, the liquid bags, you go through security and there's a big sign that says, A, you have to have a plastic bag to put your liquids in, and B, we're going to charge you £2 to these bags, and there's no alternative. And the comments, I was just stood by this part of the airport listening to people, and two people on the same day said, "You thieving bastards." Forgive my French. And kind of played that back to the board, and it was, this is what your customers are saying about your brand. And he said, "Not in my airport, it's not." Well, yes, it is, because there were things they were doing unintentionally that were creating a very negative emotional response. So absolutely, we should try and make sure there's positive emotions. You know, sometimes even just neutral emotions, as long as it's okay, that's good enough. But really, you know, I challenge any organization to understand, well, what are those pain points? What are the frustrations and niggles? Because it's not always the most obvious things.
No, I think that's a very sound point, and I think we can sometimes get too obsessed with data and over-reliance on data as well. And I think kind of your example where you actually just go and kind of stand with the customer and listen to them. That's where kind of you hear the real emotions. That's where it kind of brings the data to life. So again, I think that's a great tip for anyone here to kind of go and just, view your customers, see what they're doing, kind of listen to what they're saying and all of that. And it just bring the whole story to life. Kate, someone who's kind of like spent her whole kind of like life in marketing, just moving on from kind of what Jerry said then, kind of, have you found it that sometimes it's hard to engage kind of at the board level to kind of get them to buy into what Jerry described as that kind of sprinkle of magic customer experience and emotion?
Yeah, I think it can be, and I think as well, particularly in some of the places that I've worked, so like L'Oreal, we weren't having a direct relationship with our customers. We were having a relationship with Tesco or Boots or whoever. And so even in terms of things like the customer service team, they would close at 5 o'clock on a Saturday. That isn't when your hair dye goes wrong. It's normally about like 7:30 in the evening, and you're meant to be going. Sorry, but you're meant to be going out or something, and then you can't get any help. So that kind of removal thing, and even in terms of working with Tesco, one of my favourite things to do, I'm a sado, but some people know that already, is go on like a company store shop for e-commerce shopping, to see the people that work in the supermarkets pick the orders and see how you thought that your shelf marker was really clear that was L'Oreal Paris LV shampoo, but it's actually like ELVP, and they don't know what to put as a substitute and those kind of things. So I think the more that you can get board members out experiencing it, the better, definitely.
Absolutely. And just staying with you, Kate, for a minute, this morning we talked a lot about how influencer marketing has lost the trust of kind of UK consumers. We looked at the Fire Festival documentary, which, by the way, if you haven't seen the Fire Festival documentary, go and watch it. It's fascinating. But what I'm really interested in is how do we win back that trust? But before you answer that question, it'd be good to kind of get some context into what you actually do, because I think it's great.
Yeah, so I'm co-founder of AxisStars. So my business partner is Louis Saha, the ex-Man United and France footballer. And he came up with the idea for AxisStars based on his experience in his career, where as a star, you sort of hit the limelight, you get a lot of people, sharks swimming in the water and saying, we can advise you on where to invest your money, or you should do this partnership with this brand or whatever. But a lot of the time, your agent is only focusing on whatever particular contract you're in, the club that you're playing for is only focusing on how long you're with them, and no one's thinking about what happens when you retire. So a lot of sports stars sort of hit retirement, it's a massive shock to them, they don't even know what their electricity bill is or anything, and the stat is that 50% of them go bankrupt within 5 years of retiring. On top of that, there's a lot of like mental health issues, divorces, etc. And so AxisStars is a platform where stars from sports and entertainment can apply to join, and they can find within it trusted brands and service providers. So they can buy products, they can find lawyers, wealth managers, etc. But they can also find work opportunities, educational stuff. So the Johan Cruyff Institute have all of their professional sports people degrees and stuff in there. We have TV opportunities, all those kind of things, so that they've got a one-stop shop to come to and find work and educate themselves.
And
what was the question again?
I knew you were going to ask that. I guess
a bit like I'm in Westlife, by the way. I just feel I need to say that. I'm just waiting to stand up for the key change.
I was going to say, if we could kind of play some music with a key change, that would be brilliant. I can't get that out of my head now. Sorry. So I guess the question was around kind of how do we win trust back with consumers when it comes to influencer marketing?
So I don't think all influencers are created equal in the first place. So I don't think that there is trust lost with all influencers. I think there are the kind of man-made influencers, as I would call them, that have decided that they can make a lot of money out of being an influencer, and they've created a YouTube channel, and they're potentially quite cynical about it and are promoting peanut butter at lunchtime, a handbag at 4 o'clock, a champagne spa day in the evening or whatever, and you don't necessarily know what they stand for. I think there are other ones that are still true influencers as a career, but that you have followed their story, and they've almost become modern day soap operas, I guess, in terms of the way that you follow their story. So people like How to Dad, the New Zealand guy. I don't know if anyone follows him on Instagram. There are various sort of fitness and food bloggers that have started genuinely because they were interested in fitness and food, and now they're getting sponsorship deals, and I don't think consumers have a problem with that. They know that they're getting paid for it, but they still respect their views, and so they'll follow them. But I think part of the reason we've done AxisStars is one of the big missing chunks is that you've got a huge amount of stars who are famous because of their sporting skills or their acting or their comedy, and they don't know how to harness this following that they've got from a social media perspective, and brands can't get in touch with them because their agents are very much focused on their professional contracts and aren't necessarily doing commercial deals. But they've got an engaged audience, and they could genuinely talk about products that they were interested in or that they liked. We get so many examples of stars whose agents have been approached by brands, and because the agent can't make any money, they've never told the star. So, you know, a star might have 3 kids and would have loved just to have free passes for Alton Towers or something and wouldn't have even wanted money, but the agent's not going to make any money on that, so they never even know they could have had it. So I still think there's power in just free product stuff for influencers as well. It doesn't always have to be like 10 grand to post.
Absolutely. I think, Sue, have you got a point there as well? Sorry.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Kate, about influencers not being all the same. If you look at the NHS Twitter account, which is @NHS, and also Sherwood Forest Hospital, they've done something quite unique in their Twitter, which is using their own staff as their advocates. So you know when normally with your Twitter account you have your logo as your profile picture, what they do is have a member of staff as their profile picture, and they rotate it every week. And the profile description normally says something about the staff, what they do, how they help patients, etc. And that's actually using the power of your staff as your advocates. And I think sometimes as us as organisations with the digital world is how can we make it easier for them to advocate your services, whether they're patients or your staff. So those are some examples where people said, God, you're brave, handing over your Twitter account to a member staff for one whole week. But the engagement we get from the public is just so immense, because how many people know Latin now? So say someone said, oh, I work in cardiology or dermatology, and then for them to say, well, that means skin, that means heart, and this is what I do on my day-to-day, it makes that emotional connection. And that's the sort of thing we need to build up when they don't need your service. So when they do need it, you're upmost in their minds.
Absolutely. And Jamelia, kind of as someone that kind of, you know, is big on kind of purpose and values, how do you find influencers that kind of share those values and that kind of overarching purpose of what you believe in as a brand?
We've found influencers quite organically. I like to separate influencers up because I think sometimes when we think of influencers, we think of millions of followers or hundreds of thousands of followers. But in my experience, influencers with 3,000 followers seem to convert a lot more than those in the millions or in the hundreds of thousands. So I think it's quite important that we think of everyone as influencers. Even if you have 1,000 followers on Instagram, you're still an influencer as long as you have a message to communicate and people actually listen and engage. So when we think about influencers, we need to keep at the forefront engagement because that's the most important thing. And the question was?
So yeah, I think you've answered it.
There we go.
But I guess it comes down to kind of authenticity again,
yes.
Making sure.
Yeah, authenticity. So we've come across quite a few influencers because they actually subscribed to our service. So we're a subscription box for women with naturally kinky curly hair, and we found that a lot of our customers were producing YouTube videos, Instagram stories, Instagram posts without us asking, and they actually happened to be influencers. So we paused their subscription and sent them free boxes and said, just keep doing what you're doing, and we'll keep supporting you. Amazing. So I think pay attention to what your customers are doing because they could be creating content for you free of charge, and literally all they want is to use your service for free. Amazing. Or just to see your business do well.
So I've got kinky and curly hair, but I'm not a woman. Can I?
You can. I can send you some products.
All right, nice. That's good. There you go, some free products, free swag.
I need to check your followers. No, I'm joking.
Don't know. Kind of. Can someone check my followers? Kind of Ben, if we kind of come on to you. Again, something we talked about this morning is kind of the disconnect between customer experience and marketing, and how we kind of need to kind of bring that together again. So how do we stop kind of, you know, brands from operating in silos when it comes to their kind of departments, especially customer experience and marketing?
So let me just give some context. So I'm I'm a marketer who has been passionate about customer experience for quite some time, a couple of decades, which I think in the sense of customer experience is it's a fair amount of time. And for me, I was a frustrated marketeer in the sense that previously I looked after marketing for Interflora, and customer experience responsibility was something that fell to me as being, I suppose, another line of many on my job description, but it just wasn't getting enough focus. And I think something I'm quite frustrated by still, and very much fighting the cause for, is that customer experience is, I think, still misunderstood by so many businesses, in the sense that, only last week I was having a conversation with somebody, and it's still very much of the view of, well, it's a brand thing, and actually, it sits within the marketing area. It doesn't at all. And you know what? Within my time of having a pure focus on CX at Interflora, it's enabled us to get really clear as to what our brand purpose is about, ensuring that has been led from up top, because ultimately, consumers are really important to influence what your brand purpose is all about, and finding your own unique position within market as well, that gives you your unique stripes, but it needs to be led from up top. And it needs to be led that way, both in terms of its initial launch, but also its role of being reminded on a constant, continuous basis. So we lead by our brand purpose, but have also created a really simple, intentional customer experience, which sounds very glamorous, but ultimately it's just some really basic cues that everybody across the business, irrespective of their role, which has a reminder as to who our customers are at its most simple level. So consumers, our suppliers, our staff, and also our florists. And also those cues of what consistency actually feels like in terms of delivering a great experience, irrespective of those customers. So actually that responsibility falls to everybody within the business to actually uphold, and it's something which we need to be making sure that we're not only reminding, but we're also encouraging and supporting within all of the various functional areas of the business to make sure it actually happens. But something that we've embedded in the business is something called Customer Mirror, which on a weekly basis just gives opportunities to celebrate some of the stories as to things which have been done, which are great examples as to absolutely on-brand experience for Interflora. And sometimes it's the small details that are the lasting memories, irrespective as to whether I'm a consumer or whether I'm a florist. And I think the final thing I would just touch on is the fact that at a time in which I stepped into the role, our florist community, still best part of 1,000 independent local florists that are the true artisans of creating and delivering the brand, we saw as being suppliers, and that's not the case. You know what? They're our best customers. Ultimately, they've got a choice as to whether they want to be doing business with Interflora or not. And there's a significant mindset shift that happened within the business to actually recognize and treat that community much more as a customer, and making sure that the beautiful moments are delivered just as much for our florists as our consumers as well. But it takes time and it takes effort, and we're not perfect all the time, but it's about amplification and making sure that you get away from that horrible suggestion of CX being just that brand thing. It's a responsibility that everybody has to live, I would say.
Absolutely. And Jerry, I know that's something also I could see you about to answer there. But yeah, some of you've seen as well, right? So I'd love to get your opinions on what Ben's had to say.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, in terms of what Ben was talking about there, you cannot underestimate the importance of having that singular clarity about how good you want to be, the acknowledgement of how your business fits into your customers' lives as opposed to how you expect them to adapt to your processes. Because if you have got that clarity led from the top, as you say, then everything else starts to fall into place, because the brand team know what expectations to create. The people who are delivering the customer experience on the front line know exactly what the rules are. If the computer says no, but common sense says yes, they know, actually, okay, I know what the rules are, I know what I can do here. And it all starts to come into place. But without that clarity, people will just carry on doing their own things in different divisions cross-functionally, and everyone thinks they're doing a great job, but actually when it's just they're colliding with themselves, if you like. So yeah, having that absolute clarity of how good you want to be and how committed you are to that is absolute paramount.
Wonderful. Great advice. And Jamelia, we're going to get an end review if that's all right. And we've got a kind of small presentation, I think, to bring your story to life. And I guess the question is, how do you turn some of your customers into those brand advocates that champion the company and tell those stories?
Sure. So I broke it down into 6 points, really. The first one being dialogue, followed by listen, followed by observe, then feedback, adopt, then feedback, and then
stand
culture.
Stand up if you want. I think we're going to break into presentation mode.
Oh, okay. Hi, guys. So Treasure Tress, really quickly, is Europe's largest monthly product discovery box for women and girls with naturally kinky curly hair. So those that are familiar with Birchbox or Glossybox, think of that, but for women specifically with curly hair. The first point being dialogue. So I mentioned one of the best things to do to create customer advocacy is to actually engage in a dialogue with your customers instead of just a monologue. So I think so often we think about the message that we're trying to tell the audience. We don't think about what our audience or our customers are trying to tell us. So I actually got this phrase from a book called Tanning of America by Steve Stout, which I would 100% recommend. And he said that marketing must evolve beyond a monologue to a dialogue or a megalogue, which I think is a great perspective. This is just one way in which we do it at Treasure Tress through polls on Instagram. So we're gearing up for our 4th birthday and we're having a pop-up shop. And while the brand is focused on hair care, we appreciate that the community are involved and interested in a lot of different things. So we've asked them specifically which panels they want to hear about so that we know how to create the agenda. So instead of us saying, we're doing this event, come along, we're saying, we're doing this event, but what do you want us to do at this event? So people said being a business owner, makeup, hair care, industry, branding, influence, models, so on and so forth. Secondly, I would say listen to their advice. So you're asking them for their advice, but when they actually tell you what they think, do you actually listen and do you actually act on it? Does anyone have any idea who these 3 men are? Run DMC. Right. So a great example, oops, I don't know what I've done there. A great example are Adidas. So Adidas were in slow decline. And they had a marketing manager who was very forward-thinking and actually got invited to Madison Square Gardens to watch Run DMC, and he didn't know why he was going. Little did he know that Run DMC had created a whole song called My Adidas, and they'd created this new culture where all of these youth were wearing these Adidas trainers, taking out the laces, and when they came to the concert, they saw hundreds of thousands of people holding up the trainers that were in slow decline. They had no idea that this was actually a trend that this group had created and that they had created a whole movement, a song, a whole culture around it. But had Adidas not listened and had they not made the transit to Madison Square Gardens, they would have no idea that the brand was about to pick up. It was about to become trendy, and it's because of these musicians why people were actually interested in Adidas all over again. So I use this example to say that listen to what your audience is saying. So we spoke about social listening through social media, feedback through emails, Twitter, Instagram. We should be listening to our consumers on all platforms, but then also being active and actually following through with what they do. So once they realized that Run DMC were promoting their trainers, they actually launched a campaign with them. Next up, I have observe. So observe what our consumers are doing. So we noticed that once a month when our boxes arrive, our consumers created an unboxing culture, which we didn't necessarily expect. So people would receive their box, they would open their box, and then they would show everyone on their Insta stories what was inside the box, and then they'd go on to wash their hair and show people how they wash their hair using the products. We picked up on this pretty early, and we decided to make all of our customers influencers. So instead of just giving influencers promo codes, we gave all of our customers promo codes. So now this is a lady that has maybe 3,000 followers. She's got her own discount code, and she converts on a monthly basis for us. Alongside this lady on the top right, she's a model, subscribed to the box, and now she's got her own discount code, but also shows on a monthly basis other women how she takes care of her hair. So the main point that I want to reiterate here is observe the behavior and culture and build traditions around your brand. So now we have an unboxing tradition. So someone that joins the company next week, they're going to also go on Insta stories and share what's inside their box because they've seen other women do it. A brand that I think does this extremely well, our Fenty Beauty, some people may or may not know, owned by Rihanna. So something that they do really well is if you take a picture of yourself wearing Fenty makeup with excellent lighting, great editing, they'll actually repost it on the Fenty Beauty platform. So not only does this make their consumers feel seen and heard, but it also makes them feel appreciated and represented. So I think for so long, brands invested millions in video shoots and photo shoots, but now we've got consumer-generated content which brands are actually using on their platforms, which just screams authenticity. Community and culture. So I thought that I was building a hair care business, but what I actually have come to learn is that I've built a community and a sisterhood. So I thought that women were subscribing to Treasure Tress and coming to our events because they loved hair care. But really, as you can see in the bottom picture, they love having a great time, connecting with each other and building friendships. So this means that what we do and how we run our events has changed slightly. We don't just focus on hair care, but we focus on bringing women together and exploring various different life changes and life phases with them. A brand, again, that I think does this really well is this guy called Dapper Dan. Does anyone have any idea who this is? Did anyone raise their hand?
No one's that cool.
One at the back and one over here. You know who Dapper Dan is? Brilliant. I met him this year. So Dapper Dan, in this picture here, he was doing what he called not knocking off designer brands, knocking up designer brands. So he was going to Louis Vuitton and buying about 100 leather bags and then redesigning them and making them into clothing. Shortly after, he realized that he could actually print the Louis Vuitton print himself and actually make the clothes out of that, which is obviously illegal. So before long, these brands came knocking on his door and said, listen, you need to stop doing this, and filed lawsuits against him. All of the brands done it except for Gucci. Gucci have now built a partnership with Dapper Dan, whereby celebrities, boxers, athletes go to his shop and get bespoke pieces. So instead of Gucci suing him for using their fabrics and not following tradition, they noticed that people were going to him because he listened to them and made clothes that they wanted to wear, which the brands weren't making themselves. So again, instead of Gucci trying to make the clothes that they thought people wanted to wear, they built a partnership with him and allowed him to continue what he was doing, but legitimately this time. Feedback. So after each event and after each engagement, we find out from people what they want next from us. So this is a picture from our first pop-up shop last year. And when we asked women what they wanted, they said more space, more panels, more days, more knowledge, more music, and for it to be child and male friendly, and more good vibes. A brand that does this extremely well is a brand called Glossier. So here you can see exactly where they're having a conversation with their consumers. They've got one of the highest engaged social media accounts on Instagram. And you can see here that their customers are even telling them where they should be distributing their products and which products they want to see. So I feel like a lot of the time, branding and product positioning is guesswork. But if we actually pay attention and have conversations with our consumers, then we'll understand exactly what they want, where they want it, and when they want it. And then a word that I've mentioned already is culture, but I'm using this to kind of bring everything back together. So brands ultimately breed their own culture, and I feel like a lot of the time, founders and CEOs think about the culture that they want to create through a company, but they don't allow their consumers to have any put into this. And for us, it was really key that our culture was kind of born and built with our customers. So my first point being, make your customer your cover girl. So this is one of our subscribers who is now a team member, which I always say is one of our competitive advantages, in that we have 2 of our customers who have actually recruited onto the team. And that's primarily because they know the brand inside and out. They came from professional backgrounds, and their loyalty to the brand has never wavered, and they've proved to be incredible team members. So anyone that's starting a business or working in a big business, I would definitely say consider consumers or your customers as your future hires. At the bottom there, it says 85% of our consumers are kinky curly. So making our consumers our cover girls meant that the women who we posted pictures of and who were primarily on our page were going to be kinky curly girls. speak the customer's language. 59.28% of our consumers use iPhones, and this is one of the promo images that we've used for this year's pop-up shop, which is an airdrop. So if you've got an iPhone, you know that this is an exchange which happens between two. We've got accept and accept because you can't decline to come to the pop-up shop because you have no choice. But again, since most of our consumers use iPhones, we've started to create promotional content which mirrors the iPhone because we know that's what technology they like. And then finally, we're allowing them to share in the creative process. So we've got a blank canvas for this year's pop-up shop, and we're literally allowing our followers, our subscribers, and our audience to help us design what the pop-up shop this year looks like. And I've said that transparency is the secret ingredient because I think for so long, organizations were faceless. We had no idea who was behind them. We didn't know who was on the team. But I think by being super, super transparent, allowing people to join you on the creative process, speak in their language, and actually representing them, I think it's a huge, huge way to get your consumers on board, make them feel like they're part of the team, and then therefore have them advocate for your brand when you're not in the room. A brand that does this extremely well is Supreme, and I'm conscious of how much time I've taken up, so that's it, and a shameless plug for our pop-up shop on the 22nd to 24th of November in Hoxton, London. You should come down.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not going to be cruel. I'm not going to ask you all to sit back down again because I think we're kind of like on the cusp of time. But kind of thank you to Jamelia, thank you to Kate, thank you to Sue, Jerry, and Ben. Round of applause for everyone, please. Thank you.